one of the problems was you could donate unlimited sums of money to political parties for party building activities, and there was no prohibition of this. And that was an issue, okay? And so we said, look, people are always looking for loopholes around. So you had three different ways that people are spending money. You have individuals who contribute directly to campaigns, you have political action committees that contribute to campaigns, and then you had people who made these soft money contributions to political parties. And the soft money was getting out of control. In fact, before we start with this, let me show you the data on soft money and how that kind of could potentially be an issue. They started tracking this more diligently in the 90s and the early 2000s, and you can see that in 1992, a presidential year, you had $88 million given in soft money contributions, and that number is going to steadily trend upwards until 2002, $457 million, and 2002 is not even a presidential year, okay? Total amount of soft money contributions for this time, $1.5 billion over a 10-year period, right? That's a lot of money, okay? And that's not even including, remember, that's just soft money contributions. That time frame doesn't include individual donations to campaigns and how much PACs were given as well, okay? So this soft money contribution, people were like, hey, what's the point in limiting what groups and PACs can donate if you're just going to allow this soft money, all right? And so ultimately what happened was people wanted to change the law. They said, look, we need to do something about soft money. So 2002, after that really expensive election, Congress passed a law changing campaign finance. The Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act. It's a long name, but the BCRA does a couple things. One is it specifically bans soft money contributions. Okay? It said, hey, these soft money contributions that we used to allow parties to make, no more. They're completely banned. No bueno, no good. Right? Soft money contributions are banned. And people felt really good about themselves. They're like, this law will be super beneficial. Right? That's not the only thing the law does, but that's the biggest effect. We have to ban soft money. And believe me, it was not easy to get Congress to pass this law because a lot of these people were benefiting from these soft money contributions. Okay? So they said, look, what we'll do to make sure that you can still pay for your campaigns and still campaign effectively, we'll increase the PAC and individual limits, right? And you don't need to remember all these numbers, okay? They'll never ask you on exam, and I won't ask you this either. They'll be like, well, how much can an individual give each candidate, right? I'm not going to do that. And the AP people won't do that either, right? But this little chart shows you essentially, for example, here's what an individual can give. And there's a lot of ways for you to insert money into the system. You can give up to $2,800 per election to a candidate. And how many candidates can you support? As many as you want, as many as you have the money to do. If you have millions of dollars and you want to give $2,800 to every single candidate running for office, that's your prerogative. It's your money. You can do with it as you please. Right? But that's the limit you can give per election. You can give money to a PAC. You can support as many PACs as you want. Right? You can give money to the local Democrats or local Republicans, and you can give money to the national Democrats and the national Republicans. Individuals can donate lots of money to the political system. Right? And here's what PACs can do. Okay? Most PACs are what we call, they're going to support multiple candidates, and you can give up to $5,000 per election to a candidate. All right? And so they gave you these options, and they're like, hey, if you're part of a group or you want to donate to a group, here's what the group can do, here's what individuals can do. Okay? Rather, you're just straining to see. All right? Ultimately, these are what people can do with their money, and they changed some of these figures, like this $2,800 per individual. They adjusted every couple years to match inflation. Like in 2002, when they first passed this law, it was a $2,000 limit. Okay, but every couple of years they adjust it. Next year they'll probably change it to $2,900. Right? That's what you can give to a candidate or a campaign, and that way you still can give money to the system. You can still make sure that candidates find ways to get money to campaign and get their message out. All right. So people are like, oh, this law is pretty good. You have a ban on soft money. you have new individual and PAC limits. It also allows for something called bundling. No, that is not where you take your home and auto insurance and bundle them together under the same company. Those are bundles, right? Bundling is when individuals put their contributions together as one big group gift. So like let's say we all wanted to donate to Kanye 2024. Right? If we all wanted to donate to Kanye's campaign in 2024, and instead of Maggie taking her $2,800 and giving it directly to Kanye, she says, hey, why doesn't everybody in Fourth Mod pitch in $2,800? And we can say this is one big bundle gift from AP Gov Fourth Mod. Right? And you're allowed to do that. And it magnifies the effect of your gift. Right? It's not a big deal if Maggie goes up to Kanye and says, hey, I gave you $2,800. I mean, Kanye will be appreciative. And at the same time, though, lots of people are going to give him $2,800. But if you say, hey, I'm part of the AP Gov class that gave you, let's see here, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 of us. We gave you like $26,000. Right? That goes a little bit further. Okay? That's why people bundle their contributions. Right? Because it has a bigger effect. And think of it, if we got, I mean, if you're going to get $2,800 per person and we got 20 people, that's $56,000. Right? And Kanye's more likely to remember that. He said, oh, that's right, that's that AP Gov class that gave me $56,000 for my campaign. Yeah. Bundling works. There's strength in numbers. All right? Now, despite this law, and those are the 3 big things about this law, despite that, people always look for loopholes. Okay? There are also loopholes. Now, you couldn't donate money directly to campaigns, but remember, people are always looking for an angle, and one angle they find is something called an independent expenditure. Ooh. Right? Here's how this works. Let's say that Riley here, this Riley, runs for political office in 20 years. Okay? And by that point, Riley has long forgotten Mr. Scalise. She's like, hey, moved on to life, that's the way it goes. And she's a big wig, but I never forget Riley when I see her in the news. I'm like, oh, Riley's making a name for herself. Let's say that I am living in another state and I want to help out Riley. I just go out and spend about $10,000 on t-shirts and campaign buttons and stickers that I have made that say vote Riley. Am I allowed to spend that money on that? Even though she never asked me to do it, I didn't tell her I was doing it. Can I do that? And the answer is yes. That's what an independent expenditure is. When you spend money on political activity, right? And you do it with your own money without coordinating with the campaign. You're independent of that campaign. Riley didn't know I was doing it. Her people didn't know I was doing it. I never told them. She didn't ask. I just did it. She has no control over me and how I spend my money. And therefore, the government has no control either. Right? If you want to go out and you want to buy, like let's say you want to spend $1 million on Trump t-shirts just because you like Donald Trump and that's your preferred candidate, you can do that. And you can just give them away. You can sell them if you want to. But the idea is that Donald Trump's campaign didn't ask you to do that, and you didn't tell them you were doing that. It's completely independent. Now, a lot of people were hesitant to make these independent expenditures because they don't want their name associated with politics, especially like business owners or CEOs or businesses themselves, because remember this, what happens like in recent months, what happens anytime somebody comes out and supported Donald Trump, just even with words?
Some people will stop buying their products.
They'll boycott or not buy their products simply because they're that annoyed with it. So, you may get like a really wealthy person who says, maybe I want to support this candidate, or I'd like to make an independent expenditure and buy something on their behalf, but they didn't want to deal with it because they don't want their name attached to it. Right? So that's one loophole. Okay? Another loophole is what we call 527 groups. 527 groups. Ooh. And these are particularly devastating in terms of the amount of money. Here's why they're called 527 groups. These are political groups that are organized under Section 527 of the tax code. These are political groups that are organized under Section 527 of the tax code. And look, they're similar, like it's a political group like a political action committee group, but these 527 groups are different. Here's why. 527 groups can spend unlimited sums of money on political activity. They can spend unlimited sums of money on political activity as long as they don't say vote for or vote against or like elect or defeat. So you can't express that you want a certain candidate to win or lose, but you could spend money on ads like, for example, Landon Paul hates puppies. I once saw Landon Paul leave a puppy in a yard unattended. Landon Paul even eats animals. He can't be trusted. Call Landon Paul and tell him how you feel. All right? Ultimately, as long as you don't say vote for, vote against, elect, defeat, those 527 groups can spend unlimited amounts of money on political activity. Oh, man. Now, these 527 groups, they did precisely that. When you look at the numbers, the amount of money that they're going to be spending, it's pretty ridiculous. Hang on, I'll show you what they're spending. 527. One time I was running a race and I got race number 527 and I was super excited. If you're a runner, you'll understand, but not exactly. 527. Give me the data. Give me the data. Oh, here we go. 527 groups, their expenditures, what they're spending here in years. These started becoming popular in 2004 and all the way up even to 2018. You had more than $1.2 billion spent by 527 groups in the 2018 election. Numbers haven't come in yet from the 2020 election, but I would imagine they're pretty crazy. All right? These 527 groups, and you look over time what they spend in each election cycle, going back to 2004, we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars. It's, it's when you add it all together, we're talking about the billions. You probably get 1, 2, 3, 4, near close to $5 billion of what they spent in the last 16, 18 years, right? And that money's all spent on political activity. Hey, by the way, when 527s and groups and PACs and campaigns all spend money on political stuff, who benefits from that? Like, where do they spend the bulk of their money, any campaign or political activity? What do you see all the time on television? Commercials, all right? Media companies love it because they're able to basically command any price they want. Think if you're a printer, t-shirts, stickers, campaign buttons, you can make a lot of money that way. Just think of paper products, what a campaign uses there. Computers, electric bills, overhead costs. Running a campaign gets really expensive, okay? Now, 527 groups are putting a lot of money into the system, right, and spending quite a bit. Something else we want to address here too. When PACs or groups like 527 groups give money, do they give more to Democrats or to Republicans? Not a bad guess, but no, they actually give pretty equally. Both sides get money because when Democrats start seeing Republicans use 527 groups to get money into politics and to spend money on political activity, what do they immediately start doing? Same thing. It's like an arms race, only a money race, right? And remember, a lot of groups don't care about your ideology. They just care, are you going to vote the way we want, right? And when you start looking at some of this information on PACs, you will see that they love to give money to those people, right? In particular, they also like to give money to, let me ask you this, do they give more money to incumbents, people who are already in office trying to get reelected, or do they give more money to challengers? Why'd you say challengers?
I feel like the incumbents would feel more secure if they wasn't promoting
No, it turns out I understand your logic, but it turns out you're wrong. Groups want to give to incumbents more frequently. What's the big difference? What has an incumbent already shown they're capable of doing?
Getting stuff done.
Not getting stuff done. There's one in particular thing.
getting
Getting
in office.
into office, okay? Nobody wants to give money to a loser, right? And incumbents have shown that they know how to win, all right? Look, Shelley Moore Capito here, in this, she raised $5.3 million in her Senate race. And her opponent, Paula Jean Swearingen, let's see what she raised and spent. Oh, the Senate seat here. Let's see. Shelley Moore Capito raised and spent 5.3, or raised 5.3 and 3 million, and Paula Jean raised only 1.6 million. Shelley Moore Capito has her beat by a margin of about 3.5 to 1 in spending. And it's not because people didn't like Paula Jean Swearingen, they just didn't think she had a chance. And a lot of people don't want to bet on a loser. Okay? Think of this. How would you feel if you were, like, let's say a candidate really inspired you and you're like, I'm gonna send them $50. I feel like I'm gonna do that. And then that candidate loses the election. What do you feel like you've done with your money? You've wasted it. Okay? Or what's worse is that they drop out of a race. You're like, oh man. Look at this. House District 3, our district here in West Virginia. This one's gonna crazy too. Carol Miller didn't spend a lot. She raised $800,000 and spent $527,000. But look at her opponent. Hillary Turner, only $84,000 raised and only $58,000 spent. Right? Literally, Carol Miller's outspending her and outraising her by a margin of almost 10 to 1. So remember, when you think about this, the bulk of the money goes towards media and ad buys. Whose voice is getting heard 10 times more frequently? That's not rhetorical. Carol Miller's is, all right? And that's concerning. You look at other races like District 2 here, the House race in District 2, raised and spent. Alex Mooney raises almost $2 million, spends $600,000. He felt like he was going to win pretty handily, and he did. So he was like, I'm not going to spend all of it. I'm going to save it for a rainy day. Catherine Kunkel only raised $578,000. Incumbents win in part because they get more money, and they get more money because they win. It's hard to unseat an incumbent, and one of the reasons why is that you don't have the access to the funds. Now, there's other advantages that they have, but incumbents get more of the money. District 1 here in West Virginia. David McKinley. This is terrible. Look at this. Natalie Klein. Okay, she only raised $76,000. She gets outspent like 11 or 12 to 1. How can you expect to win an election when your opponent is outspending you 10 to 1? Right? You can't win without money, but money doesn't mean everything. But here's the thing too, when you're a challenger and they think you do have a chance, let me show you what can happen. Amy McGrath in Kentucky went up against Mitch McConnell, and Democrats thought this is our chance to get rid of Mitch McConnell, and you're going to see how much money they spend, and it's a little bit scary in a way, right? Mitch McConnell raised and spent $55 million and then spent $43 million of it. Amy McGrath raises $88 million, right? Can you imagine raising and spending that much money to lose? How much of a gut shot is that? Oof. All right, and when you look at McConnell too, even though they get money from PACs, when you look at the details, most of these candidates, even though they get money from PACs, most of it's coming from individuals, okay? You can see the individual contributions, large and small, when you add them together, they make up over 81% of what Mitch McConnell's getting, and PACs only make up less than 9%, all right?
ultimately they matter, and you can see Mitch McConnell, what he raised, and like other Senate races had in the past, he's not spent nearly as much money, right? And these are still pretty expensive. But he spends $50 million, raises and spends $50 million. See this little yellow line? This shows you what the average member of Congress, or the average member of the Senate, spends on a Senate race. This year, an average senator race costs you about $6.6 million, right? And McConnell's like driving it through the roof. That's a lot of money, right? By the way, though, it's always easier to spend other people's money. And if you look at how his campaign spends it, a huge bulk on media, a huge chunk on fundraising, some of it's yet to be classified. They're contributing to other groups, strategy and research. I mean, most of it they're giving away towards media buys, right? So look, they put this law in place, this Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, and they thought this is going to solve our problems with campaign finance, except it didn't, okay? All you did was create other opportunities or loopholes that people could spend on political activities. Like, for example, you got independent expenditures. Right? That's one way that you could spend on political activity. And you've also got those 527s. Right? And if that wasn't enough, there's going to be another loophole. Right? Fast forward to 2008. Oh, 2008. Okay? 2008, Hillary Clinton made her first big run at becoming president of the United States. Okay? And Republicans were expecting this, and they also were like, hey, we need ways to make sure that Americans see Hillary in a really ugly light. And so a group called Citizens United came up with a nice strategy. Right? Citizens United was a group that had several corporations that made it up. Okay? Several businesses or corporations. And these groups, they funded a project called Hillary the Movie. Okay? It's called Hillary the Movie. Ooh. Right? Now, this was going to be made available to anybody who had DirecTV, and you could watch it on demand. And it was a 90-minute documentary-style film that was going to tell you why Hillary Clinton was an awful candidate for president and why you should never support her. Okay? Now, here's the problem with this, though. The Federal Election Commission says, wait a second. You guys are a bunch of businesses, and you spent money on Hillary the Movie. All right? Corporations are not allowed to spend money on political activity. All right? And the people who were in Citizens United, those corporations, they said, oh, it's not political activity. What is it? What do we use movies for? Entertainment. They're like, it's a film. It's for entertainment. Oh. You think the FEC buys that explanation? No. They're like, look, we're going to not allow you to air this Hillary the Movie because it's not an entertainment film. It's a political ad. It's basically a 90-minute political ad. And corporations are not allowed to spend corporate money on political activity. This is a long-standing principle. And so Citizens United files a lawsuit saying, hey, you can't do this because, first of all, it's not a political ad, it's a movie. And even filmmakers have First Amendment freedom of speech rights. Right? By the way, this Hillary the Movie, oh gosh, it's just bizarre to even talk about now. I remember this being a controversy. Right? And the Supreme Court has to address two key questions. The first question is this. Okay? Is Hillary the Movie, is it a film or is it a political ad? And what do you think the answer to that is? It's a political ad. They're like, look, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. Okay? And it said, look, political ads can be 2 minutes or they can be 90 minutes. But the court said no reasonable person could watch this and deny that it wasn't meant to skew Hillary Clinton's chances of becoming an elected official. All right? Now, even with that said, though, the Supreme Court also said, look, even though this is a political ad, let's talk about that ban on corporations spending their corporate money on political activity. Okay? Corporations
are made up of what? Who works in a corporation? People. And do people have First Amendment freedoms? Yes. And so they said, look, because people make up corporations, corporations have First Amendment rights as well. And that means you can't ban them from spending their money on political activity. Right? And they're like, hey, if corporations want to fund a project like Hillary the movie, they can do that, even though it's a political ad, because they're allowed to spend money on political activity the same way that other people can. You can't tell them not to do that with their money, right? And they said, look, you can't, like, that doesn't mean that they can go directly donate to a candidate or campaign, but what they can do is make those independent expenditures, right? And so here's what companies did, okay? Now, you had companies who didn't want their name explicitly on something. Like, they didn't want to be like, have like, oh, here's Hillary the movie, brought to you by Walmart. Because then people would get all pissy and want to boycott, right? So instead, here's what they did. They formed these political groups that we call super PACs, right? What corporations did is they formed groups called super PACs. And these super PACs are literally groups that only make independent expenditures. These are groups that only make independent expenditures. They can spend unlimited amounts of money on political activity as long as they don't coordinate with any candidate or candidate's campaign. Right? They can spend unlimited amounts of money on political activity as long as they don't coordinate with any candidate or candidate's campaign. And they have very innocuous names. Like, for example, if I was going to start a super PAC, I would call it the Friends of Cabell Midland. Like, oh, that's really great. Or the Patriots Club. Something that doesn't sound all that sinister or bad. And then what you could do is you could give me donations, like let's say deals like, I never did like Hillary or Joe Biden. So like, Scalise, I'm going to donate $5 million to your super PAC. And I'm like, great. And deals like, hey, will they ever know that I gave you money? And I'm like, nope, because super PACs don't have to disclose their donors. That's even better. So when my super PAC, the Friends of Cabell Midland, runs an anti-Joe Biden ad, people have no clue who helped fund it. So they'll never know that they should boycott Deal's business. Oh, that's pretty clever, isn't it? Super PACs. So now you've got another way to spend money on the political system. Look at that. And we're right back to where we were 20 years ago. There's so much money being spent on political ads. Okay? Fun fact, by the time they got this case solved, Hillary the movie, like, it wasn't an issue anymore because she'd already lost and Obama had become president. But in 2012, there was an anti-Obama film that was in theaters that you could go watch. And they've made other ones similar to that too. All right? And if that wasn't enough, let me show you some of the monies that is spent by super PACs today. Super PACs. Hang on. I'll close this window. All right? Super PACs. That's what we want. $2020 financial activity for super PACs. You can see right here that super PACs raised $2.5 billion. Billion with a B. And notice that, look, a chunk of it's liberal, a chunk of it's conservative. And when you look at the lists of the biggest spenders, they tell you how much they raised and spent and whether they're more conservative or more liberal. And some of them literally just run ads that support or run down one candidate. And you get the numbers of dollars that they raise and spend. Why are you only going that direction? I don't know. All right? And you see, like, there's one called the Senate Leadership Fund. The Lincoln Project, that's been a popular one. Women Vote. Let's check out the Women Vote list. All right. By the way, some of these super PACs will disclose their donors because they don't care that you know, but some of them don't. Like, you look at Women Vote, and let's see if they reveal their donors. They don't. They just tell you the people, like what groups they're associated with. Like, I don't know who did this from Ulta Beauty, but Ulta gave money to this super PAC, to the Women Vote PAC. And it tells you the candidates they target as well. So, for example, they spent $5.3 million on ads for Joe Biden. Okay? Notice they spent $4.1 million against Susan Collins from Maine. In fact, they spent a lot of money running advertisements against a lot of people, all right, hoping that they lose. All right, notice that the people they spent money against all won. Oh, that's sad, right? But super PACs are spending large quantities of money to get involved. Now, when you look at this in terms of the presidential election, it's actually kind of concerning for a number of reasons. I don't know why the Apple thing keeps coming up. Right? Presidential elections. Now, just in, here's the thing. This candidate or candidate committee, that's how much that Joe Biden and his people got from individuals and PACs, regular methods, hard money contributions, $937 million. Outside money, okay, meaning things like super PACs or what we sometimes call dark money, they got an additional $400 million. And you look at, Trump and his team, I mean, there's a lot of money that has been put into the system in theirs. Just in the presidential election, you're looking at more than $2 billion just in the presidential election. And if you look at, say, the congressional elections, it gets pretty bad there too. Oh, you can look for a particular member, which we're not looking at all the races. I thought they'd have totals. Okay? And the thing is that with these types of expenditures here, okay, people worry about the corrupting effect that money has on politics. Now also, the fact that so much money is being spent on politics, what does this do to regular people who want to run? Would that encourage or discourage them from running? Discourage. Because they're like, look, if you don't have money independently, you're going to have to raise it. And you're like, I'm just a regular guy. I don't know how this is going to work. I bet you are, Siri. All right. 2016, the cycle there, you see this is how much was spent by super PACs, and that's nothing compared to now. Right? That's where we're at. Okay. By the way, up there, the groups that spend money on political activity, like through independent expenditures, 527s, or super PACs, oftentimes it's referred to as dark money because we don't know where it's coming from. Those super PACs don't have to reveal their donor lists. Dark money. All right. We'll stop with that there.